Hi, this is Alina, and you're listening to Your PharmD Bestie. So hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Your PharmD Bestie. So today I have some, yes, PharmD Besties. Today I have some guests to come speak with me for this episode. We are going to be sharing some of our insights and memories regarding pharmacy school. So these were my classmates at UCSF, and now we're all in different areas, but I think it is very lucky that we have all of us here today. So I hope that as listeners, you can take the most out of this episode and also just have fun with us as we recall some of our funny memories from pharmacy school. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Alison. I'm from Sacramento, the best city in the world. And what I'm doing now is I'm doing my PGY1 in residency at UC Davis, acute care program.
Yay! Selena, your turn.
Okay, hi, I'm Selena. I'm from San Francisco, and I'm currently doing my PGY1 residency at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, so it's a pediatric focus PGY1.
Welcome as well. So again, we all went to UCSF pharmacy school, so which is why a lot of the things we talk about, we have a lot of things to share that are in common for this episode. But before we dive into that, just a brief recap of episode 3, we had Valerie who came on as a guest to talk about her experiences in preparing for OSCEs and pharmacy school exams. So if you haven't had a chance to check that episode out, you can go back always. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in our inbox and DM us, and I'll do my best to answer those in the following episode. So we're going to start off with talking about some reflections of the academic aspect of pharmacy school. So UCSF 3-year program. The first 2 years are didactic material. So a lot of the bread and butter of what we should know before we go into our clinical rotations our 3rd year and actually practice with actual patients in an actual hospital or whatever setting that you're doing your rotations in. So a lot of our shared memories will be occurring in those first 2 years. So I'll kind of just go around and we'll talk about maybe some of our reflections regarding the academic aspect. Did we have any favorite subjects, least favorite subjects, why, rotations that stood out to you, and maybe how that rounded you out as a better pharmacist or resident in your current position. Sorry, that's loaded.
I think my favorite subject, kind of biased, is neuropsych. I felt like it was such a well thought out course because, we had fun things to do, escape rooms that was Harry Potter themed, which I love Harry Potter. And they had guest speakers every single week of patients who were suffering with disorders like schizophrenia or depression, things like that. And just hearing from these different people and having these fun activities, I really enjoyed neuropsych. And that's why it made me want to pursue psych in the future as well. How about you guys?
Yeah, favorite.
Yeah, I guess I would say one of my favorites was ID, even though I kind of struggled in it. That's our last block right before we go to Appies. Yeah. I thought ID was also very well structured. I think Conan, our course director, he knew what he was doing. He definitely had a lot of experience with teaching. He wrote his own textbook type thing.
Conan's crazy.
Yeah, but he's so good. And whatever rotation you go into, all clinical ones, ID will be part of it, whether you want it to be or not. So I think with that being the last block, and you go straight into Appies, my first Appie block was HIV. Oh. So
that's
it was HIV and care. So I was let me just remember all the brand names, all the generics,
really hard,
everything.
HIV and care.
Yeah, so I really liked ID. I thought that was fun, even though it was hard. Yeah. You have any other subjects or other favorite blocks?
I think, okay, when we first started our P1 year, everyone thought cardiology was hell, and it like low-key was, because it was such a big jump from like foundations to like an actual disease state block that we were learning. But it was also well known that cardiology was one of the more organized blocks of our year, and everything else that followed. I think there were areas where we saw for improvement. And so there was like a lot of like feedback sessions, etc. But I think for me, like the clarity came in cardiology, because for me, like my study habit usually is like lots of like practice questions, etc., whatnot. And I think that GQ, who was the director of that block, was really good at providing a lot of resources outside of what he taught in class to help us prepare for our exams. And like I still use a lot of those materials, I think, even today. And I personally, I would say, like, out of all the acute care topics or disease states, I'm not even like going into necessarily like clinical care, because I'm still very interested in admin, but cardiology is still like one of my favorite topics. And I think it's very applicable to all patients, really. I think underlying, like, all patients will have some sort of cardiology problem that you need to figure out. So I just think it's like so applicable, which is similar to ID, but ID was way too hard for me.
They pick the hard subjects as their favorite. No, I agree. Like those blocks were very, very organized, and I really enjoyed them too, even though they were really hard.
Yeah.
And I love the course coordinators. They're so nice.
Yeah. I will say that I think that, at least from what I remember, like all the course coordinators like really wanted the best for their students. So I definitely like really appreciated that. Dr. Florin, actually, like, huge shout out to Dr. Florin.
Shout out to Dr. Florin.
Shout out to Dr. Florin, because I struggled that block like a lot, and I remember coming out of like one of the retakes, and she like called me while I was at work to tell me that I passed, and she started crying.
Aww.
So that's like forever one of my core memories.
She's not teaching respiratory anymore.
Really?
Yeah. A new associate professor is coming in. I'm actually teaching respiratory, that's why.
Wow.
So I met the new course.
Wait, are you the OSCE?
Yeah, I'm doing OSCE.
Me too.
I'll see you there.
Yeah.
So I'm doing OSCEs, and then also like the course, conference cases. Yeah.
Yeah. I will be coming back to UCSF to do the OSCEs because it's required in our residency. And I'm just excited that it's with Selena now.
Cool. What is Florin doing now then?
I don't know. She's definitely CC'd still in the emails.
Oh, okay.
But I think she's kind of like hands off in terms of like that. But they're also trying to like change up the curriculum a bit, I think.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what changes they're doing. No idea, but I'm just going to show up and teach. So see you outside P1s.
Yeah, well, if you're thinking about applying to UCSF for pharmacy school, you heard it. There are some changes coming. I guess that is a nice thing about UCSF, is that they are taking in feedback to make changes.
They always ask for feedback. I think something that I'm impressed with UCSF is they back up their teaching methods by studies and research. And so I think that's what I'm impressed about, and also implementing feedback from the students.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so didactics. We spent 2 years at UCSF learning the bread and butter. And then our third year, we all moved to different places for our clinical rotations, which was considerably sad.
Shout out Fresno.
Yay. Well, I think we all ended up having like pretty good experiences, regardless of where we ended up. I ended up in SAC, and all of my rotations were actually at UC Davis Health. So I had a great experience there. Alison?
I did mine in Fresno. I was super devastated at first, because it's, the Central Valley, but then I had the best time there. Like, I had so much fun there, like if I were to go back, like I would, only because of the people there. Like, they were so much fun, Also, it's like different type of culture there, and then so it's kind of fun to like figure out that culture with your classmates too. I lived like with 3 other people from our class, and they were so much fun. We always like, sorry, I'm like going off.
No, you're fine.
I'm like, I like loved living in that house, we got like a big house in a gated community with 5 rooms, even though there's 4 of us, and also rent was super cheap too. And, we would have movie nights every single night, and there was like a lot of camaraderie, and it was just funny to figure out like the depths of Fresno together, because it's just a new place where we're not used to a lot of places. And there were also UOP students there, and so we would always hang out with them too. And yeah, I had so much fun there. Embarrassing, but not embarrassing, because I would relive that year.
Why was it embarrassing?
I don't know. How's SAC?
Well, I enjoyed SAC. I think that SAC as an area itself, like, I think you'll form your own opinions if you're ever in the area, but it's suburban, more suburban than not. And so if you're like the type of person who's like, oh yeah, like I need a lot of excitement and things to do, you're going to need more time to explore what SAC has to give before you like feel the full effects of that. But I think a lot of people who come end up going because it's not like a place that they think of living in like their 20s. It's probably like more of like in the later down the line, like you want to settle here. And plus, like, I feel like during my clinical rotation year, a lot of it was just like going through the motions of going to rotations every day, doing work, preparing for eventually like applications for residency and whatnot. So I feel like the actual time that we had outside of it to do things for fun was more limited. Granted, I lived with a resident last year at UC Davis, so we did our own fun, and like we always found like new boba places. So I had fun in that sense. But it was less like camaraderie, I think, for my class or cohort in the SAC area, because everyone was just like so far apart and so busy most of the time. In terms of the rotations itself, though, like I really loved the rotations I had, which was a reason why I ended up applying to UC Davis Health and it was my top choice. I still stand by it that we have very special and unique preceptors and like RPDs, RPCs who really care about their students and residents. So I think that that's what really stood out for me as I was going through the year. Like plenty of things happened. My Snapchat memory reminded me that I got into a car crash like last year, this year. But I'm speaking about this because I met up with my cardiology preceptor actually that I had during that time, like last night for dinner. And so we were just talking about how like it's been like over a year since we knew each other. And like during that time, like she was really, really caring and like always checked in to make sure like I was okay, especially after that car accident. Like she was like, you take the time you need to get back out your feet, because I was like, I'm ready. I'll come back into work tomorrow to give a presentation to the med team. She was like, no, stay home. So I think just a lot of like fond memories in terms of the types of connections I made during my clinical year. Yeah.
Dang, I feel like my time. So I was in San Francisco, meaning I didn't move at all, and all my like core friends were also at in San Francisco. So I feel like not much really changed socially for me. If anything, I think I probably didn't see them as much because I felt like our schedules were like completely off. Where like in didactics, we would go to class together, come back home at the same time. But during rotations, like you never know when they're coming home, or maybe they're taking a nap or something like that. But most of my rotations were at UCSF, and UCSF, they only take UCSF students. They don't like take outside students like UOP or like Toro or anything like that. So it's kind of nice to make sure that like you're like the only learner on. And so like your preceptor really focuses on you, and then they're very familiar with like the UCSF curriculum. But I guess, yeah, I don't think my like app year was like that, like crazy or anything. I did rotate at some other sites. I rotated at Lucille Packard, over at Stanford. I rotated at Zuckerberg for my like HIV and care rotation. And then I rotated at like Walgreens for community, but the rest were all at UCSF. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like it was the same for me. I just stayed in SF. My friends were in SF, so I don't think I had like a drastic change.
Well, I guess we can try to reframe that, because I think when I think about it, like from my appy year up until like resident year, like I personally saw a lot of growth in terms of just like my ability to handle like patient load or to work up patients efficiently. And so for you, like having gone to pharmacy school at UCSF where you have like IPs and then now you have like APPs there and now you're like a resident, did you see any, I guess, growth in the sense that like maybe what you experienced during your appy years like really translated into how you are as like a pharmacist now that you're in residency there?
Yeah, I would say definitely I got a lot more comfortable with like our EMR, which we use as Epic. I already had all my tabs set up from when I was an appy student. And so I kind of like knew everything, like all the objective data that I'm looking for, I already know where it is. I never had to ask my preceptors like, where are you finding this information? So I feel like we can skip all that of like just getting situated with the EMR. And I was also very familiar with like the discharge like situation at UCSF. Like we have a meds to beds program with Walgreens, and so I was already familiar with that. I already knew about like our transitions of care team. So I felt like a lot of the logistics parts, I felt like I was able to, you know, check off. And so I really just focused more on like patient workup and clinical knowledge and, you know, taking one step further with being proactive and like your recommendations for the team. And so, yeah, I definitely think that I even surprised like some of my preceptors when I was like, oh, you know, you can look at like this tab. For example, like one of my patients was going to surgery. And I was like, you know, there's a surgical report tab. And they're like, what? Because they're out here like opening case view. And I was like, well, I guess you could do that, but there's an easier tab. Yeah, so I think just like staying within UCSF, you definitely build on top of everything that you've already learned. Yeah, I think that's pretty much how it helps me with residency so far.
Yeah.
Well, you're I guess
all different places.
Yeah.
I definitely have seen growth both clinically and personally, and I feel like the last few years in pharmacy school, APPs, and then residency, I've seen like this is like my like exponential growth both clinically and personally, and I'm like honestly really proud of that. And I like handle challenges now, and I'm honestly proud of myself of handling these challenges now. I think that in pharmacy school, you know, like it was like super hard. You know, you had like summatives, which is like the exams like every few weeks. And so just being able to go from foundations to cardiology, you know, like that big jump, it was like a lot for a lot of us. And just being able to know how to time manage and like know what pertinent things to focus on, that's like a big thing. And I think going into Appies, I learned a lot about like resilience and just keeping on going, even though you feel defeated every day because you feel like you're not smart enough, because your preceptors know so much because they've been practicing for like years, you know, but this is your first year, not even as a pharmacist out in a clinical setting. And so you can't be too hard on yourself during, especially like acute care, amp care, like these clinical rotations. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've learned is to like give myself grace in those areas where, you know, you are expecting 100% from you, but everyone else is expecting like 50% of that because you're new to like the clinical setting. And then going into residency, a lot about resilience again, but just learning how to take ownership of all your patients, take ownership of your students. And I'm so lucky to have such a supportive system at my hospital that I feel like the independence that they give is right to help me grow. And then personally, you know, like I feel like I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned how to set boundaries. I've learned how to be kind to myself, and those things are easier said than done. But I feel like just growing up in your 20s, you know, you learn those things no matter what setting you're in. But in the past few years, that's like my experience.
Yeah, you're diving into as we're going through like our career growth and changes. I think it's easy for people to forget that like we all have lives outside of that too, and so we're all really just the same as like probably anyone who's listening to this, struggling with a lot of the same things too, and so that's just like an added layer to I think our stories that tie into our career growth. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important to acknowledge that. My cat's like walking by and like proud of it. So yeah, so I appreciate you sharing that. And I agree. I think like in the couple months that I was doing residency at UC Davis, like I had another cardiology rotation. So that was really like a marker for me to see my own growth in my clinical skills. And I think like the amount of independence, as you mentioned, that they give you, like I had a student for the first time that I was precepting on my own, and I was picking up like entire teams on days where we were like really busy. I was making recommendations to the team with, of course, like my preceptors' approval, but there was a lot more like, I felt a lot more confident with my ability to be a clinician. And so I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to grow and that growth that I've seen in myself as well. I was thinking about something earlier that I like wanted to touch on. Oh, you mentioned precepting. Mm-hmm. So I think my 2 cents with precepting is that not all preceptors will kind of grade you or judge you the same way as like that preceptor you mentioned, where like they like expect 50% from you and you're expecting like 100% from you. Like some preceptors will be expecting a lot from you in maybe unfair standards. But that being said, like I think I wanted to maybe talk about how the type of precepting we've experienced has changed or shaped our way of precepting, because I'm sure like both of you have precepted during residency. Like how was that experience for you, and like what were some things that you were trying to tell yourself while you were precepting to say like, I don't want to be like a preceptor I had in the past, so like I don't want to make the same mistakes with my student and make them feel like unwelcomed, etc., or like these were things that I wish that my preceptor had told me when I was a student, and like I'm going to do my best to relay that to you. Like, how was that experience for
Selena can go.
Oh,
She hasn't talked.
Sorry, I'm just watching Max. But I actually have my first student that I'm precepting. I am the primary preceptor, meaning I have to do his eval, which I got an email for.
Crazy.
Yeah, so UCSF Residency, they just started this year with UCSF School of Pharmacy, where the residents will be the primary preceptors, meaning we are doing the orientation. We are like going over expectations. Yeah. And I was not trained for this, obviously. We had like a teaching boot camp, but the first day of our teaching boot camp was more about like teaching large group sessions, like giving a lecture, and not about like individual precepting. So this, I'm just like being thrown in it. And yeah, I think I approached it how you would say about like what preceptor would I want if I was in his shoes. And so unfortunately, the timing was so weird because I'm his primary preceptor, but I wasn't even on clinical service his first day. I was staffing in the main pharmacy. So he actually had to go shadow me in main pharmacy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I was working an evening shift. So I was working 1 to 9:30. And I was like, you can stay for like a few hours. I'll let you go at like 4. But I just felt like it wasn't really productive on his end being a student because the whole day's blocked out. But I didn't start my shift till like 1. So I'm not going to come in early, right? Yeah, so there's that part as well. But in terms of like actual clinical rotations, I'm currently on general pediatrics, and so it's like general medicine basically, but on ped side. So I'm taking him on rounds with me, and I try to approach it in terms of giving him a lot of autonomy. I think for me, the best way I learned was just being hands-on and just being thrown into it. I think if I get babied or coddled, I don't think I'll actually grow to my potential, if that makes sense. Like in terms of like counseling or like being micromanaged, for example. Like I want him to think like, oh, like for example, I asked him like, have you ever counseled a patient before for discharge? And he said no. So I was like, great, you can do anti-coag teaching and these 2 antibiotic teachings. Like I had a lot for him. But you know what? He did it.
Wow.
He did it, okay? And in peds, there's a lot of supplements. So a mom had a question about a supplement interaction with anti-coag. And I was like, what, resource would you use? Like, shout out natural medicines.
Shout out natural medicines.
So he was able to like look that up, formulate his recommendation, share it with me. And I told him to call the mom back and follow up to just close out that whole thing. So I thought that was a really good learning experience for him. And then his second week, I had another teaching for him, and I was like, do you want me to come shadow? Would you feel comfortable if I were there shadowing? Because as a student, I hated when my preceptors were behind me.
Yeah.
Because I would stutter, and then they'll be like, next time, try not to stutter. And I'm like, well, maybe just because you were there. But, it's okay. So I asked, I was like, I have confidence in you, and I want to like assess your comfortability if you want me to be there or if not. He said he was willing to do it by himself. And I said, I'll be right outside the room if you want me to. And I was outside the room. So and when he had a question, he just came out the room and I was like, I have a question. But that's kind of my approach to precepting. It's a little bit hard because tomorrow he will not be on rotation with me since the whole UC system is striking. But I digress. But yeah, I think that's kind of my approach. Just trying to let the student kind of take lead on their learning. And also as a preceptor, I'm like learning too, right? Because I don't even know how to precept. So I'm like, I'll give you feedback only if you give me feedback too, because I need that like 2-way basically. Like how can I help you learn? Like help me help you learn, basically.
Couple follow-ups.
Yeah.
So then as like primary preceptor, like if he gives you a recommendation, do you have to... Oh, I guess you don't because like licensed, right? So that
he's not following any patients because EP students are once a week. So and then like on Gen Peds, like I feel like we have a lot of turnover. So he doesn't really like follow a patient. If that
Wait, I'm so sorry. This is an EP student?
An EP student. I think the room and I thought yeah.
That's a lot.
He can counsel on anti-coag. That's a whole OSCE.
That would be so Even as an Appy student, you know, if that was my first rotation, I'd be so scared.
No, he did great. Okay, the antibiotics, I know he didn't have ID yet, but it was like amoxicillin for like 2 days.
Oh,
Azithromycin for like 1 day.
Yeah.
So, and like, I would obviously have him like review it with me. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like just going all willy-nilly, but I mean, that's what I was doing when I was an intern. So I think he can do it. Shout out Josh.
Shout out Josh.
For what?
You did amazing. I'm proud of you.
I need to do his eval.
Oh,
he's doing great.
That's your student.
That's my student.
Oh, shout out Josh.
Okay. Shout out to Selena's student.
Yeah, shout out to Selena's student.
Wow. Okay. Well, do you want to talk about your experience?
Yeah, you know, like during Appies, I had like a variety of preceptors. I had some that were super easy, some that were really hard, and some were in the middle. And I tried to emulate the people who are in the middle. So there was this one preceptor that I love so much. She tried to get to know me outside of rotation. So, like, when we would work on, like, doing notes or, like, things like that, this is, like, an AmCare rotation, she would ask me, like, what I would like to do for fun, like things like that. What do I do in Fresno? And, like, making that effort to do that every single day, you know, like, it made me feel really great as a student. And it made me feel, like, not just, like, a chore that the preceptor has to do on top of their work, you know? And so I try to do that as a preceptor. I try to get to know them and have fun with them, you know, and just be able to make them feel comfortable. Because that's one of the most important things I think about precepting. Because when you have to like counsel, you know, in front of your preceptor, they might be a little scared, but you don't want them to be scared at all. And I'm trying to do that. But balancing the relationship of being like a friend versus a preceptor is very hard and something that I'm trying to figure out still. But yeah, that's my whole premise, to be kind and empathetic to your students, but also try to push them and challenge them in the ways that you can. And I try to do that strategy of like, them observing first, and then you shadowing them, and then them actually doing it, to make them feel confident by the end of whatever activity that you're doing, so that they can do it by themselves. Mm-hmm. That's me. Also, setting expectations in the beginning is really important too, because 100%. And revisiting those expectations if anything goes wrong. Yeah.
So I like briefly saw you as you were precepting, and like
when?
Well, I'm just like in general, like when you had a student, and I think like I also had a student on one of my rotations, and I feel like all of those challenges and like fine lines that you have to like find, like not being too friendly with them, but also like wanting them to know that like you care. Mm-hmm. I think like those are all really important aspects to consider as a preceptor. And so like I think that I personally, like from an outsider's point of view, I thought that you did like a great job with your students when they were doing that. I kind of like had similar experiences, or like I tried to do similar things when I was precepting my students. It was one like doing the like show her once and then let her do it herself type of deal. But my student was great. Like a lot of times she was proactive, and like if she hadn't done it for the first time, I'll ask her like, hey, do you want to try it for the first time, like on your own? Like, how can I best support you through this? And like she'll take the opportunity and go with it, and she'll do really well. Or we'll like have feedback sessions right after pretty frequently. And so I think we have like a great dynamic, and echoing like the aspect of trying to get to know them outside of just rotations too. She was someone that I briefly interacted with at UCSF prior to going into residency and prior to her starting Appy year. So this was more of like an opportunity that I thought to like get to know her more. So our thing right now is like, we'll still go out for coffee if we have the opportunity to. And that was like a tradition that we had when we were on rotations with each other, where like before rounds, we would just grab coffee together. And like, I wanted to show her that outside of rotations and outside of applications, like there's aspects to life that you should still enjoy, and like take those small moments to like celebrate when you can. So I personally had a great experience precepting, and it sounds like we all did. So shout out to all those preceptors out there. And if you're to be a preceptor in the future, like I hope that you can emulate the good aspects of the preceptors you really admired, and see your own growth in the process of precepting others too. So, yeah, there's that. Thank you for talking about that. That was like something that just came to mind. Yeah, it is a big topic, like a big change from being a pharmacy student to being a resident and a preceptor. So go back to pharmacy school though. So I know like we briefly touched upon like the social aspect. I think we all had different social experiences in our clinical rotation, but I personally had so much fun during didactics, and thus like met great people. I wanted to go around and share some of like our favorite memories from pharmacy school. It could be like more than one, like go for it. 'Cause I'm sure right now we're all kind of reminiscent, like
those were the
years.
Days.
Yeah.
Those were the good days.
It wasn't easy, but I think it was like
I had
really
more
fun.
time than I do now.
I know, but like they don't know that, you know.
Oh.
They only know like the time that they have. I don't know. I had so much fun. It's just hard to pick one, you know? I feel like my favorite memory, besides the times that we like just would hang out with each other, it's just like doing those like spontaneous things. Like after class, like we would be like, oh, let's go here. And we're in like San Francisco, you know? So like there's like so many places to go, so many exciting things to do, even though it didn't feel like it during the time. And just like having our houses like near the school or like where we finished work, we could just go over to someone's house and just hang out and chill. I think that that's something that I took for granted, especially like now that I'm in residency and everything. But just like being able to hang out at someone's house and having so many people to turn to when you feel like sad or happy, things to celebrate with, you know, you always had someone there to like hang out.
Yeah. To digress, like I think we all had like different like friend groups in pharmacy school, but it's still like the idea, like looking back where we're like, oh, but we were all going through the same thing together. And so like even now, like we can come together and say like we bonded over basically like the same things. And I totally agree that it was such a bonus, like living so close to the school. And also UCSF is located in like Sunset. We're like 9-minute walk away from Golden Gate Park and like 9th Street in Irving. So like you have a lot of like great food places, boba places, that we would just be like, okay, like class is over and let's go to Little Sweet on Irving Street, and like enjoy boba. So always a great time. I definitely miss that a lot. And it's just exploring like nightlife too in SF. For me, I went through majority of college in COVID. And so I feel like I didn't experience like what college life was like until I got to pharmacy school. And it was even better than I think I would expect in college, because you're with people who are very similar minded, have similar like career goals, and like they're passionate about very similar things. And so I think that just makes like spending time with them and like having fun together even more enjoyable. So that's just like how I thought about it. And for me too, I think the community that I found during pharmacy school was one that I could definitely like lean on during hard times. Like I went through lots of periods of grief, and I just remember like being able to walk out into the living room at the end of the day and say like, yo, today was such a rough day. And then I'll have like all my housemates there, like, yo, what's up? Like, sit down, like, we're gonna study, but also like yap, and like, let's make cocktails on like a Monday night. It's just like random things like that, spontaneously, like best memories of my life. So
No, for sure. Best memories, hands down.
hands down.
I think everyone like living with each other was probably the best. Even though I'm from San Francisco, I was on student housing because I wanted to bond with like classmates and I didn't want to live at home. And I think that was like definitely a good decision made for pharmacy school because similar, like we're all on the same schedule. We did a lot of like walking after class, a lot of like just going grocery shopping or like getting boba or just spontaneous dinners. And we would like go out to events together. So I felt like that was always fun. And yeah, I felt like our living room was such a hangout spot. We'd watch like anime movies, have dinner together. Yeah, those were the good days.
It was so good.
Yeah, and also you didn't have to like reach out to people and be like, oh, let's schedule something. And it's like a month out in advance. You're literally like, oh, like, let's do something tonight. Are you free? Yeah.
Well, you better be free because we're on the same schedule.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know you don't got class because I don't got class.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I cried like so many times when we had to leave for Appies. I also cried at the end of Appies too, like 10 times too.
Well, you had like a really good experiences, so and that makes sense. Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. Wow.
Worst memories. I can go. Okay, well, let me just lay out the fact that I am an introvert, okay? And so I was basically going through like an identity crisis at the beginning of pharmacy school. When I was in college, also during like COVID area, it was just kind of like me and my roommate. We definitely did a lot of like things together, but mostly at home. We didn't really go outside considering COVID, but we're also just both introverted. And I think it was like the first like block or something of pharmacy school. And then, you know, you're in that phase where you're meeting everybody.
It was a lot.
Everybody wants to go out. Like, guys, I had a moment where I think it was like after class, everyone was like, oh, do you want to like go to the library? Because I think we had like an hour break before the next session. But I live right by campus. So I had to decline because I knew I was at my limit. And I just sat in my room in the dark for an hour with listening to music. It was like such a moment, but it was such a good moment for myself. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was a worst memory, but like it's definitely not like a good memory that I was like at my limit. Like I was so tired. Like I wanted to meet all my like classmates and hang out and get to know everybody, but I was so tired. And I was like, I can't. Then I started learning to say no to hangouts because I was like,
so good.
I was like, I'm sorry, like we need to reschedule because I'm at my limit.
Yeah.
So I think that was an issue for me socially. Was yes, a lot of your friends were available, but also at a point for me personally, I was at my limit. I was like, I need to sit in my room in the dark alone and listen to music because I can't.
Your social battery needs to be recharged.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I actually remember that. Like, okay, you didn't tell me that you like sat in your room for like an hour in the dark, but like, I remember when I first met you, like we were like, oh, like, I'm introverted. Like, I'm not going to go out and stuff. And then literally that first week of pharmacy school, I was like, Selena's outside. Selena's with Helen and Aston and like Trevor. Like, they're doing like so much stuff. And I was like, is she actually like introverted? Like,
that was the thing.
I remember that.
No, I was kidding.
It wasn't fake. It was just like a different.
It was just in a moment.
Different era.
Yeah. Then after that, I went back to sleeping in my room. And I only come out of my room when I wanted food. And they'd be like sitting in the living room just chilling. I'm like, good morning.
Yeah.
Worst memories? Ugh, that's so hard. You know, I feel like also I had to set boundaries. You know, I like didn't, like I'm not good at that in general because like I just can't do that. I am like an extrovert. So I'm like so different from Selena. But, you know, sometimes like extroverts like go into problems socially and like things like that. Especially like if you're hanging out with the same people for like every single day, you know, of your life, you know, you're gonna get like annoyed and you're gonna get like frustrated sometimes about like the actions other people do. And that's just the reality of it. Like there's still good people, but it's just the reality that we're all kind of different in some ways. And you know, you just have to embrace those like differences that you have. But just being able to stand up for yourself and saying like, this is who I am. And even though you think this way, I think something different. And then we just have like a mature conversation about like, you know, things. And then you just go on your way. And I think that's something important to learn in your 20s and just like in life in general. And I think pharmacy school helped me create like the best of friends and making me learn how to embrace those differences and having those mature conversations and just being able to be friends, but also having differences at the same time and learning how each other work, how we work together, but differently.
Very wise. Yeah. I do think that like in that stage of our lives, like we will continue to like learn these important social and like life lessons about like just people and like ourselves as we continue to grow. I think for me, worst memory was probably I think it was also like a learning opportunity for me, but like experiencing grief for the first time for me. And I think like a lot of people don't talk about this and a lot of people our age don't experience something like this so soon in life, but like maybe losing someone or a loved one around you. And so I think I'm not going to go too deep into it, but just like learning to manage those emotions and that loss while you are going through an accelerated like program and curriculum or graduate school, like it can be very challenging. And so I think for the people who have gone through something like that or are going through something like that, like I think it's just important to recognize that you deserve a break if you need it, and also be kind to yourself, because during that time, like sometimes you do have to like go through it on your own. So for me, that was like probably one of like my worst memories of pharmacy school, was just like going through like loss outside of school, but it taught me to value like the people around me even more. And so I guess like rounding it out, like a lot of important lessons learned, and like going forward in life, I continue to want to carry those traditions and like respected values towards other people. Yeah, I don't know if that made any sense, but
No, that did.
yeah, great.
For sure.
Yeah. I think we can close out this episode with just like some advice or takeaway from pharmacy school that you want to share with listeners. You can take some time to think about this too, because I think there's a lot, and I think we've already shared like a bunch, but if I were to like sum it up and give like one piece of advice or takeaway from pharmacy school, I think no matter like what stage of life you are in, because like we had classmates who like were older, like had already worked several years before coming to pharmacy school, I think pharmacy school is still a time for you to explore first like your career options and to like still bond with other people, because I personally like I believe that no matter like where you are in life, like you will still meet new people, and I think those people may or may not change your life. And so I think it's important to just keep open-minded and remember that even through like the dark and stressful days, like you'll make out of it and you'll reflect and look back and miss some of those moments. So when you're going through it yourself right now, like enjoy it to the best of your ability.
That's a good one. I think like along those lines, I would just like, if I had to give advice to myself in pharmacy school, P1 me, I would say like have fun. Like have fun, you know. Easier said than done, but like try not to stress too much, you know, as long as you have like objectives and goals and know like your plan for the future and you're trying, things are going to work out, you know. And I'm not just saying this because things are working out for me now, but I think it's because like even if it doesn't work out in the way that you expected it to, it's going to work out in the end. Like, for example, if you want to do residency or fellowship and you don't match that first year, you know, that's 1 year out of your life, out of your like 80 years of life, you know? When you look back in your career when you're 50, 60, you're going to be like, that was just 1 year and I just started 1 year later than everyone else. I think that if there's any setbacks or anything in where like you are set back like a couple months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, you know, that's not going to matter in the long run.
Yeah. There's no set timeline. Everyone has their own journey to go.
Yeah. And I think it happens for a reason, to be honest. So just enjoy the present, enjoy the people around you. And if you don't enjoy the people around you, you know, just learn more. Learn more about yourself and learn more about like how to deal with those people that you don't like to be around, or just like have fun with yourself. But yeah, just like there's always going to be someone around you that you probably will get along with. So
these are like hard-hitting lessons. Okay, but thank you for sharing.
I think mine is also quite similar in terms of like having fun. I think when I was in college, I felt like it was very go, go, go. I felt like I was like, okay, I gotta, you know, do this, gotta do that because I need to go to pharmacy school because I gotta get good grades because I gotta like this my CV. And I felt like I didn't really have fun. And then once I got to pharmacy school, I was like, what do I do now? And I think being in pharmacy school, like now that I felt like my end goal was to go to pharmacy school, and then after I achieved it, I was like, what do I do now? And I think that just like being in present, because I felt like I didn't have fun in college. I was like, oh, I'll like do this after I like achieve my goal, right? But then if you really think about it, like this is like your career. It's going to be like for the rest of your life. It's super cheesy, but it's true. It's like not a sprint. It's like a marathon or whatever they say. So while you're like, you know, doing that marathon, like have fun while you're at it. And like Alison said, like be in the present. I don't think you should push something off and say like, oh, I'll like travel after pharmacy school. You can always travel during pharmacy school if your schedule allows it. But I would definitely recommend that versus saying, oh, I'm not going to travel at all. I'm just going to wait till pharmacy school or until pharmacy school ends. I'll wait till residency ends. I'll wait till like I get my job or whatever, right? Like I think if you have time, you need to schedule it in and just be present because again, you shouldn't like rush things and you shouldn't just focus like 100% in this because again, you have your life, you have like family, you have friends. You got to take care of that too. So I think that would be advice for going through pharmacy school is, and also second thing is pharmacy is very small. So try not to make enemies, try to be kind to everyone, including yourself and others, because you never know when you'll see them. Mm-hmm. And that goes as being a pre-pharmacy student. A lot of my people that I met and networked with when I was in college, I see them now as a pharmacist, as a resident. So kind of crazy, but again, just don't make enemies, be friends with everyone, be kind. That's my final advice.
Being kind is always good.
Yeah. World needs more kindness. But also, okay, this is like really random, but is 80 like the average?
I thought it was 70.
I don't know. I was just saying a random number. But
74.
74 is even worse.
From my sickle cell disease.
Wow.
Where people with sickle cell have 20 years less. And then the average, I think for sickle cells like 54.
Oh my God.
And so it's 20 years less than 70.
No, I've seen sickle cell patients. They're really sad.
Anyways,
yeah, I think that's all life expectancy is, like 70s.
So 70s. So then technically we had our quarter life crisis like already.
Shoot, I'm in my half life crisis. Just saying.
Enjoy your life.
Yes.
That's the whole conclusion and takeaway. So that comes to the end of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Alison and Selena, for joining me as guests on this podcast episode. I hope y'all had fun. And I also hope that listeners enjoyed this episode. Just gives like some insight into our pharmacy school lives and also like each of us individually as like people. I heard a lot of things that like I think definitely helped me learn more about those two as well. So I definitely enjoyed this episode. Again, if you have any questions or comments, things that you're wondering about pharmacy school or really like anything else, feel free to comment in our social media pages or DM us. I will be monitoring and answering those questions in future episodes. So thanks again. And again, if you enjoyed listening to this or watching this, please feel free to subscribe, drop a like, and comment. I don't bite, and follow our social media pages. All right. Thank you. See you next time.